Hello, everybody. My name is Thomas Bassetti, and I'm going to present a paper on super PACs and political polarization. This is a joint work with Filippo Pavesi and Massimo Scotti. Let me start with the motivation behind this paper. Until the 70s, in the United States, political elites were quite close. In contrast, today, the US politics is rather polarized. This polarization began after the Civil Rights Revolution and the realignment of the Southern Party preferences. Since that moment, congressional parties experienced a continuous increase in ideological polarization. This paper contributes to the literature on the determinants of US political polarization, and in particular, we investigate whether the introduction of super PACs affected candidates' polarization. Super PACs can be defined as independent expenditures that corporations and unions make in favor or against the election of a candidate. They are independent because contributors cannot coordinate with candidates in order to allocate money. Moreover, with respect to PACs, they are not subject to contribution limits. Before 2010, corporations and unions were not allowed to make this kind of expenditures. However, in 2010, the US Supreme Court established that this prohibition was unconstitutional. Most of the ads sponsored by super PACs are negative and anonymous. Here, I just sketched our theoretical model. The main idea is that special interest groups use the extra advertising money to neutralize the effect of negative ads sponsored by individuals and activists. Before 2010, negative campaigns provided voters with an informative signal on a candidate's willingness to adopt more extreme policies. In contrast, after the Supreme Court sentence, the quantity of negative ads greatly reduced their signaling value. This allowed candidates to collect money from special interests without suffering in terms of voter concern. For this reason, after the introduction of super PACs, we should observe an increase in the polarization of political candidates. To test our theoretical prediction, we use data from the Federal Election Commissions and the database on ideology, money in politics, and elections from Bonica. The final samples that we have consist of more than 9,000 observations covering 4,850 candidates observed over the period 2002-2014. To obtain a broad measure of ideological polarization, Bonica uses a common space scaling method to map candidates, interest groups, and donors. More specifically, Bonica considers contributions as the solution of a matching model between sponsors and candidates, assuming that on average, donors prefer ideological proximate politicians to more distant ones. In practice, a candidate's ideology is based on a factor analysis and includes direct and in-kind contributions, as well as independent expenditures made in favor of a candidate. Whereas actually negative ads are excluded. Our dependent variable is just the absolute value of the time-varying candidate's ideology. Therefore, if a candidate is moving toward a tail of the distribution, she will be more polarized by definition. In our analysis, we consider independent expenditure made against the candidate as a mediator variable. In Table 1, we report the main descriptive statistics for our dependent and independent variables. Notice that here, contributions are expressed in $100,000 and negative values just denote refunds. Okay. Well, actually in Figure 1, we can notice that candidates' polarization exhibits a positive trend over time. Moreover, we may notice a jump that arises in 2010. Okay. Actually, the same conclusion can be drawn also from Figure 2, okay? That is, this kind of jump in 2010 can be also appreciated in Figure 2, where it is clear that since 2010, negative heads increased significantly, whereas positive heads did not actually. From a methodological point of view, we use a Baron and Kennings approach, taking into account endogeneity and serial correlation. In the first equation, we test for a time break using a generalized method of moments, GMM, estimator, and actually we expect a positive coefficient for the time damping, T. In the second equation, we use a fixed effects approach to test whether negative heads increase after the Supreme Court decision. Finally, in equation number 3, we carry out a GMM analysis to assess the relationship between negative heads and polarization. So let's move to the results. In table 2, we use a GMM estimator to investigate whether candidates' polarization increased after the Supreme Court decision. Column 2 of table 2 shows that a time break appeared after 2010. Whereas the break tends to disappear when we place the shock in 2008. That is, when we use a fake shock period, which is 2008-2014. In table 3, we explore the existence of a time jump also in negative heads. Columns 1 and 2 report the results for a type 1 Tobit model with and without random effects, where actually column 3 provides the estimates of a type 2 Tobit model with fixed effects. All estimates confirm the existence of this jump in 2010. Finally, table 4 indicates a causal positive effect of negative heads on candidates' polarization. This effect is even more pronounced in 2012, when super PACs had more time to set their contribution strategies. So overall, we may say that there is a positive causal relationship between the introduction of super PACs and candidates' polarization. To conclude, super PACs increase candidates' polarization through negative heads. This effect accounts for about 20% of observed polarization. These findings are consistent with the idea that super PACs reduce the informativeness of negative heads coming from outside groups. Since that moment, that is 2010, the introduction of the super PACs through the Supreme Court decision, it became less costly for ideological interest groups to finance partisan candidates. In other words, super PACs facilitated candidates' ideological polarization. I really thank you for your attention.